Hey, hey, welcome along, Infinite Beings, to yet another series, another episode of the Infinite Me. Another series. This could be the start of a new series. Who knows? So every day we're talking about how to incorporate more infiniteness into your life. You already have your infinite powers here on planet Earth, and sometimes it's nice to actually be reminded that you have those and how to actually use them more. And that's what we're all about here. So 2 days ago, we started talking about a question that we had been asked, funnily enough, by 2 people within about half an hour of each other, pretty much the same sort of question, same scenario. So we took that as a bit of a lead to have a chat about that topic. So we covered half of the topic, or some of the topic, and we just really wanted to revisit the other part of that topic because it was such a big one. And that was about when loved ones are going through a bit of a tough time, be having feeling really shit about different things, and how you perhaps get drawn into that drama and become the shoulder to cry on. But then how do you, as an infinite being, as well as a human being, navigate those waters without being sort of too dragged into their drama and that becoming your drama? So the other day we spoke a lot about the perspective of the person going through whatever it was they were going through, the loved one. And today we wanted to revisit a little bit more about what it feels like for you going through that scenario as well, when you've got somebody, a loved one, that is going through that stuff.
Yes.
So the one the other day was called Unconditional Love or Rescuing. So you might want to go back and revisit that one. We can put the link underneath anyway, and you can revisit the first half of this if you haven't seen that yet.
Yes.
And put a lot of things into context. But let's start with the second half of that. You had a story to tell, Mandy, from someone that has gone through this from their perspective of a loved one going through something.
Yes. Yeah. So talk about when we were talking about it from the consciousness perspective, I suppose. So how do you go through a hard situation, feeling like you really want to help your loved one, because you do obviously genuinely want to help them. You don't like seeing them in pain. But then how do you maintain your own kind of sovereignty and like detach yourself from what's actually going on and see it for what it is and not get pulled into the ego stories, and then also see your own stuff that comes up out of that process as well, how much you want to jump in and rescue as well. So just a lady, I checked in with her if it was okay to share some of her story, and I went through a coaching program with her for 10 months, so I got to know her really well. And she had just come out of a 29-year relationship. She had left, and she's was in a gay relationship, and so her partner and her had adopted a baby because they couldn't have children themselves, and so they'd adopted this daughter from Romania, and so she's now like 21, I think. So and so this separation has like taken a really big toll on her daughter. Like her daughter has been well, to start with, the separation wasn't very amicable, to put it that way. Like her partner was very vindictive, if you like really wanted to screw her over type thing, and the daughter had been very much kind of skewed to sort of her partner's direction, because the partner is very close with the daughter and has been more so over the last few years, and so it was really kind of putting a lot of stuff in the daughter's head, if you like, to sort of almost turn her against her other mother, sort of thing. And so that was kind of going on. And so my friend was also dealing with all the financial stuff, and she'd never really had to do any of that because her partner always took care of that. And they had quite a lot of money between them. And so there was quite a lot to sort out. And a lot of it had come through the partner's inheritance and things. So that it sort of became a bit about like, well, this is my money, not yours. And the daughter's I've always looked after the daughter and you haven't, so it was all these different sort of stories kind of going on. And so this was really hard for my friend, because she obviously really loved her daughter, and she felt like not only was she kind of walking out in a relationship that she'd had for almost 30 years, but she almost felt like she was losing her daughter as well because of everything that was going on. And so it was, a very emotional time for her to deal with it. But because she came into this coaching program that we were doing, which is all about consciousness, kind of, being on a consciousness journey and really stepping into living an infinite life, if you like. So she was very dedicated to like, no, I want to move through this separation with the highest sort of energy and consciousness that I can. So she was very willing to kind of go through the hard yards to whatever stories were going to come up. And so it went through lots of twists and turns, and the daughter being quite sort of, she was on the receiving end of quite a lot of anger from her daughter, if you like a lot of accusations, which are not really true. And she just had to keep standing her ground, knowing that this whole thing about she couldn't rescue the daughter. Like, she tried that, there was all these, she'd go back into the story a lot of the time, and we'd have to keep sort of reminding her of like who she was, like who, that this was happening for her to sort of start to resolve this relationship and start to teach her daughter, if you like, another way of being and not being so codependent on the other partner, and also just to stand up for what she actually really wanted. And also my friend had to really train herself to be her own person again too. So there was all these like stories going on, as well. So the whole time through that journey, which is only literally just now starting to come to a conclusion in terms of the actual separation happening and being finalized. But in that time, her daughter has just gone through this massive transformation. And my friend had to keep reminding herself that she wasn't here to rescue the daughter as much as she absolutely wanted to at times. Like, she was just so pained to see her daughter in so much suffering so much from this happening. And she was getting it from all sides too. She was getting it from family members and from friends and all different things, so it was just coming at her from all these different angles. And she just had to keep reminding herself, like, no, I'm a conscious being. I'm choosing this. I did this for a reason. The relationship wasn't working. I'm not honoring myself. I know that what my daughter is saying to me is not the truth. It's just anger. It's reaction. But it's, it's very hard in those moments to keep yourself buoyed up. And so support around her was very important through that journey, to keep reminding herself of who she was. And then she also had to just get on with doing her own life as well, and just take her energy out of focusing on trying to help her daughter all the time and fix what was going on for her daughter, because her daughter also had relationships problems going on with her partner, and like there's all this other stuff was, felt like her daughter's life was falling apart, and it kind of was in some ways. And so this was like another thing. And so she just had to get on with her own life then. It was like, okay, what do I want to be doing with my life, and start really bringing a lot more joy back into her own life, and took a focus off her daughter as much as she could, and just had to keep showing her what it was like to show up for yourself, and just keep choosing you all the time over the story, choosing yourself over the story, over and over again, even in the face of, all the stuff she was copying on the other side. And then slowly, like, her daughter is just starting to come around, because she's not actually, she just wouldn't buy into the stories. So like the daughter would throw something at her, and she'd just kind of say her point of view from where she was coming from, and just go and reinforce to the daughter like how it looks to consciously live your life, and not, show up like that sort of thing. And she wouldn't go down the vindictive line. She wouldn't say bad things about the partner. She wouldn't she would just keep it to herself, draw her energy out of those stories more and more. And so it was showing up for her to take her power out of those stories as well. And she knew that. And then she had to get to a point of being okay with maybe never having a relationship with her daughter. Like, that was actually a very real possibility at one point. And she had to really grieve the loss, if you like, of that possibly being the scenario, that maybe she lost the daughter to the other partner, because the other partner had completely turned the daughter against her in some ways. And so there's so much things that it does become about your own journey, seeing the stories coming up for you to reclaim your power out of those stories. And then from the other person, as we sort of shared the other day, like knowing that the daughter had her own journey, that, her ex-partner had her own journey as well. It wasn't up to her to try and fix and, satisfy her all the time. And because my friend would always keep giving in to her demands when it comes to the arrangements, the financial arrangement in particular, she was quite willing to like be walked all over, and we had to keep reminding her, just like, no, this has been your past, like this is not you. It's time for you to say what you want now, and say stand up for yourself, and you're here to have an infinite life as well. And what do you want? And so my friend had to get really clear on, what do I want? What makes me happy? Who am I now outside of this relationship? And so really put a focusing into that. And so just by taking her focus out of the dramas, a lot of the time, they just started to dissipate, and she wouldn't get drawn into them. And the daughter has just really started to shift around now. It's almost like she's been modeling to her the whole time about what it's like to choose yourself over and over and show up for yourself and follow that feeling of what feels true to you, regardless of what somebody outside of you is saying, or how it looks, or how uncomfortable it is, or however many family members you lose, and just keep saying the truth as well, and not buying into the arguments, not getting drawn into the, he said this, you said this kind of argument. That type of stuff. So, and so she is such an empowered person now, like the space she comes from, and it just but she's such a gentle soul, so she never had to kind of get angry, or like it was just like this whole, just got to be my own, accept that this is part of my journey, I've created this for some reason, like to take my power back out of this, or this way of being that I've been for 30 plus years in my life, and I've let these things almost happen to me, like haven't stood up for myself, I haven't taken an interest in financial stuff. I have to basically retrain myself at like 65 years old to kind of learn how to look after myself. And so it's almost like going from a kid to an adult in some ways. She's had to really grow up in a lot of ways. And then just also with the daughter going there, just she basically did model unconditional love to the daughter. So it didn't matter how the daughter showed up, she just still loved her regardless of how she was showing up. It didn't matter how bitchy she was to her, the words that would come out of her mouth. She would just sort of keep reminding herself that no, she's reacting right now, she can't see the truth of what's actually going on. And she'd got to remind her of the daughter of who she was, the daughter herself, like that she had a choice in all this, and she could show up differently herself, and could be different for her too. And so she's gone on that transformation journey, if you like, just because her mum started modeling it to her. And so she's now making all these more empowered choices herself, the daughter. Like, it's just quite interesting how it's just, and it's not from my friend influencing her in any way. Like, it's just, helping her by showing her what's possible, and also offering her really unbiased advice too. So there was no, she was really trying to stay out of it and just come from that infinite perspective, and just sort of offer a very neutral perspective on things a lot of the time. And that was just so powerful for the daughter, because she was not used to that at all. Coming from a neutral space, it was always very one-sided. And she's probably started to pull her energy away from the other partner, a bit more now too, and really stand on her own 2 feet, and instead of being codependent. So it is just interesting how the stories can unfold. So this process has probably taken like a year and a half, maybe, 18 months of this kind of to the point where it's at now. So it can take time, obviously, like to undo a lot of patterns and ways of being. But it is about, as we've sort of said, that infinite space. Well, you've created this for some reason in your story, to see where you've still got a lot of power invested, and feeling like it's outside of yourself, and that people have to show up a certain way, I guess, for you to be comfortable. And it would be very uncomfortable to have your daughter obviously being very angry and almost not wanting anything to do with you, obviously after raising her for 20 years. And it was my friend's idea to actually adopt her at the time, and she virtually raised her. So it was kind of very painful for her to have this happen, but she knew it was all happening for her, like it wasn't happening to her. So it's sort of to when this stuff is happening from the outside, it's like, well, I've created this. What is this about for me? How do I take my power out of these stories that I've got running without having to rescue that other person, and just showing up and accepting them for who they are, where they're at right now, not trying to change them, just showing them that it's okay, that what they're going through is they're going through, and then having to be okay with whatever that person's decision is. Like, you don't really have control over that at the end of the day. Or if you do, it's coming from ego. It's not, the infinite perspective of love doesn't control. So it's just everyone can show up as they are
Mm.
in the moment with no judgment around it as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, but the more you get drawn into the stories, the more they do hold the power over you. So when she would go back into the story and she'd get drawn in a very big way, you could just see where she'd spiral down, like in terms of her
Yes.
her self-empowerment, if you like. It was almost like she'd go back to being a doormat again and just allowing herself to be walked all over again. And had to just keep reminding herself, just like, no, this is not who you are. Like, it's this is why you left. Like, this is the past. Like, you need to move forward now and come from that infinite feeling that's moving through you. That was the true feeling to leave, and you left for a reason. To keep reminding yourself of tuning back into yourself rather than focus outside all the time. So
wow, what a story. That's an awesome story. Thanks for sharing that. And thank the lady too for allowing me to share it. Because I think there's so many layers to that story. And I was writing a few notes as you went, because I didn't want to forget what I was getting out of it. And I think the first thing was that when this started happening, she made a choice to be conscious through the entire process. And I think that's a really solid decision to make. And sometimes it's a hard one, because it's going to be a pretty rough ride when you go down that line. And that means you take responsibility for everything that takes place in that scenario, in that reality, and how you're feeling about things, how it's showing up, your reactions to stuff. That it isn't then about the other person at all. It's actually all about you, and how you feel. And that's really tough at times to go through that, because you're going to see parts of yourself that you didn't know were there, that you don't like, and you have to confront all those things. So it is a really tough choice to make, but it's also a very wise one to make, because it is the thing that will move you through that process in the end. Like, it's and we just saw the outcome of that choice for her is now she's empowered, but not only her empowerment, everybody else around her is empowered as well. And it's sort of, to me, that's by making that choice to be conscious through the entire process, you're actually saying, I want everyone to be empowered out of this process. Whatever goes on, I want all of us to rise up, and move to the next sort of quantum level of consciousness, because we all have the ability to do that in this process. And you can lead the way for that when other people that are involved in it possibly can't. So it's a big step to make, but it's sort of that hero's journey at that aspect sort of thing. She's really been on that hero's journey by the sounds of it. It was like, all power to her. That's awesome. I think being the example to others, definitely, and taking on that thought process is, if it's you against family members or just one person, a friend or whatever, it's sort of like, I've got to stick to my guns and do what feels true for me, because then I am leading the way for others and becoming the example. So not just talking about it, but actually living it, and people get to see that. And that's the big thing that influences people and impacts them the most, is they see you living your truth. And you can't help be more in your own truth when you see somebody else standing in their power and truth. It's sort of this automatic vacuum that happens, that it's very hard for the ego to fight against the truth when somebody's going to just stand there in their truth, in their certainty, and just go, I'm not putting up the stories anymore, I'm done. Like, I have no energy for it. And that was the other part that I really got, was buying into the stories of other people. Ego breeds ego. So if you're going to buy into the stories and you're going to feed that story and feed that ego energy, then you're going to get more you're going to get more ego back for yourself and for them. So you're going to get more reaction from them. You're going to get more emotion from you. It just goes on and on and on. Like, it's the ego's loving that stuff. It's just feeding off you buying into somebody else's story. So by just the only thing you can do in that case to stop it is to remove yourself completely from that story, which is what that lady did. And just go, no. And every time you feel yourself drawn back into the story, you step back out of it again and go, no, I'm not doing this. I can see the story for what it is. I'm not going to buy into this anymore. And then you do stand in your power. Like, you can instantly feel that sense of power that you have a choice.
Yes.
Suddenly you do have a choice when you don't buy into the story. And I guess that's where you can then choose to be the shoulder to cry on, the rock for the person, but from the outside perspective, not in the story with them in the trenches type thing. They're going through that stuff. So it's not for you to go through. That's their story and their experience at that time.
Yeah.
Your experience can be to be the rock or the solid person, I guess, the person that stands in their truth no matter what.
Yes.
That leads the way for that person. And eventually, and holds the light, I guess, more than anything, if you want to sort of speak scientifically and metaphorically, you're holding the light for that person. At that stage, maybe they don't have any hope.
Yes.
Maybe they're not seeing anything but darkness. And it's like, just keep holding that space for that person, that light. That on the other side, there is hope and there's love and all those things that people are looking for. Joy, is it still there?
Yes.
It hasn't gone away. And I think the other thing was, particularly with the daughter, that is such an example of unconditional love. Like, unconditional love means no matter how that other person is showing up, how tough it gets, you love that person regardless as they are.
Yeah.
And I think really at the end of the day, everybody wants to be loved simply for who they are. And you think about it yourself. It's like, do you want people to try and change you and then love you? It's like, no, everybody wants to be loved for just who they are and how they show up in the world.
Yeah.
So everybody else is the same. Like, it's like trying to fix, change, or improve somebody or their situation is not unconditional love. It's human love because it's making you feel uncomfortable. And that's the question to ask yourself, is like, how are you feeling about what they're going through? It's not about, oh, you feel sorry for them. Like, it's actually making you feel uncomfortable or sad or hurt, or it's bringing up old stuff for you. They might be reflecting an old story for you that you've gone through, or a part of your personality that you haven't come to terms with 100%. And they're reflecting that to you. And so if you are feeling discomfort of any description or any emotion coming up, then it's like, okay, yes, I can see where this is reflecting an old relationship of mine, or something else I went through. A childhood issue I had with my parents, whatever it is, but it's bringing up that reflection point for you. Are you working through your own stuff on that for your own story? Then you're going to help release that other person from that story as well. Like, is because we are all one and there is only one consciousness, the more we look at our own stories and work on that stuff and release it back into love and to light, then it's helping everybody. Like, everybody's got that issue.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, and it does, as you kind of are saying, like, you going on that journey consciously does mean you have to go into the shadows. Like, there is no two ways about it. You do have to kind of look at the stuff that's going to come up, because it will come up. Like, it's all the ego stories are going to come up in your face, sometimes more exaggerated because you are looking to move through them, and so the ego doesn't want to die, obviously, so it's going to bring up everything for you to see. But the more you can keep reminding yourself of who you truly are, and that it is just a story, and seeing it for what it is. And yes, there still is pain, obviously, from that human level, and you know, you go through the emotions and all that will come up too, but it is that process that you do have to go through it. You can't, there isn't really any other way to avoid it, really. At the end of the day, to take your power back out of something, you have to kind of look at square in the face. Like, there isn't any other way to do it. But then I guess that's that whole thing they say about fear, but isn't it like it's never as scary as you actually think it's going to be? Like, it's that,
well, like we've talked about,
looking at it.
Jumping out of the plane is always scarier. Like, the moment before you jump out of the plane is always scarier than when you've done it. Like, it's then the exhilaration comes.
And then when you think about it from the ego perspective, of course, the ego is going to convince you that it's going to be way too scary to go and look at your shadow, because then obviously you don't need the ego anymore. So so it feels really scary, but you kind of move through it and you're kind of like, was that it? Like, it's kind of like, you know, it feels bad for a little bit, but you move through it and you're like, wow, that was kind of not as bad as I thought. Or it was kind of, you just move through it and it falls away. Something that might have, you know, run you for 40 years or something, a story that you kind of eventually move through, and it might take you 2 weeks or something, you know, I don't know, like, and you sort of like, wow, I've held on to that for that many years, and it only took me X amount of time to
like
move through it. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting when that happens as well.
It's a bit like, just reminded me of a film clip that Bob Scheinfeld, so one of our mentors, Bob Scheinfeld, we went through his program called Busting Loose from the Money Game. And in the beginning of his program, he talks a lot about the building. And you think of a building structure. So they build the base and all the foundations and all that sort of stuff. Then they're building layer after layer after layer after layer. Takes months possibly to build a massive building.
Yeah.
And you think about that as your belief structures. Every layer is another pattern, is another belief, is another layer on top about a particular topic or an area of life, or about a person, whatever. And then literally it can fall down with a couple of sticks of dynamite, can literally come down within seconds.
Think of it. Yeah, true.
And it's like, that's what happens when you start pulling out the foundations, whether you're using sticks of dynamite in the foundations or you're just pulling the foundations out.
Yes.
It's going to get to a point, it's a bit like Jenga, playing Jenga, you're sort of taking out the bottom rungs. Eventually you're going to get to a point where it just crumbles. The whole thing just falls down in one hit.
Yes.
Because you've taken out enough of those structural beliefs and patterns, or you've started to question them. You haven't even taken them out. You've just started to see them for what they are. And it's like, oh, hang on a moment. Like, why do I believe that? Like, where did that come from? It's just those simple questions of bringing attention to it and bringing awareness to it that can actually just collapse the whole thing. But it was also making me realize something I have thought about before, is the ego is actually quite self-sacrificing in many ways. It presents itself, like you were saying, it will bring up as much as it can about a particular thing that you're going through, and it's throwing story after story and beliefs and patterns and all this sort of stuff. But in its process of doing that, if you're conscious enough, you actually get to see all those things and go, why am I buying into that? Why am I still hanging on to that story? Like, oh my God, I can't believe that I still think about that person, or that this still rules me like this.
I didn't mean that.
Yeah. So in its process of actually bringing up all this stuff, it's actually sacrificing itself, because you're getting to the truth of it. The ego is actually dying because of that, or it's reintegrating. I guess it's not really dying, but it's reintegrating itself back into the truth. And it's like, oh, thanks, ego. Like, it's actually working for you.
Yes.
Oftentimes we fight against the ego in consciousness space, but if you look at it in that way, it's sort of like, oh, it's actually serving you. It's your servant. It's bringing up all the stuff that you need to see. It's right there in front of you. If you want to know what you need to deal with, then just ask the ego. It will show you exactly what you need to deal with.
True.
And then you can see the truth of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was reading an excerpt from a book by an author, Jeff Brown, who wrote, he's written lots of books, but his most recent one called Grounded Spirituality. And this little excerpt was on basically what we are talking about, like this whole watching somebody else go through a hard time and how do you deal with that. And he was made a really good point of saying sometimes that other person is not ready to deal with the situation that they're in too. So they might be aware that something's going on and they're not quite happy with it, but they may have had such a like a childhood, say for example, or a past where they got so much to a point where they just couldn't deal with any more pain, that it's almost like they've convinced themselves nothing is actually wrong, because they can't actually bring themselves to face the shadow stuff anymore, because they feel like they've spent their whole life doing that. So to have someone outside of them keep pointing that out to them and sort of saying, oh, well, you should be doing this, or why don't you try this, or this will help, sometimes that's actually even worse for that person, because they've just sort of made such a line in the sand, if you like, to not go into that dark stuff anymore, because they just don't actually think they can cope. They can't actually face it, because maybe they have spent their whole life in that shitty place. And that it's their only way of kind of keeping themselves afloat, if you like, to kind of almost pretend that it's not there, because it feels so painful to go into that stuff as well. So from that other person's perspective, maybe they're just not ready to deal with something as well. And so they potentially not be helping that person by keep drawing it to their attention about what they could be doing or trying, or even though it's coming from a loving space, like we often come at it because we think it will be helpful for that person, and it might be like, it's it doesn't mean
But it may not be immediately either. Like, it's not to say they're not taking it on, what you're saying. You're definitely affecting their subconscious. I don't mean hound the person, but just by having a quiet word in their ear type thing sometimes is enough to have that sink into their subconscious, and you don't know what that's doing. Those vibrational words, you know, what's the vibration of those words doing to that person's psyche, sort of thing. And there probably will be a point at which they'll say, I remember that conversation with XYZ, and yeah, they actually said that. Like, I get that now. But there's always a timing thing for everything. And yeah, as you say, it may not be the right time for them to be 100% moving past that thing. They're still processing stuff. There's still stuff to be seen. There's still parts of the story unfolding that we haven't seen yet. So everything has its time, and you have to trust that process. For the other person and for you as well, like whatever you're going through.
Yeah, and I think to keep coming at it from that unconditional space too, the more that you can be in that space for other people, then it does give them that permission to start showing up more for themselves too. You know, they feel that there is a different way of being that they're probably never getting from anybody else. So if you can be that person for them as well, like my friend kind of had to be for her daughter, or she chose to be for her daughter, regardless of what was going on in the outside. It does just demonstrate that there is another way of being, and sort of calling that person up to a different way of being too, and telling them that, well, you're demonstrating to them that they've got their own guidance, they've got their own connection, that they just maybe haven't been listening to it or trusting it or whatever, or putting their power outside of them too much, you know. So
maybe those sorts of words of affirmation are actually the most important things to be saying to somebody, not giving them necessarily suggestions about what they should do, but just saying, you know, you've got this. Like, you know what to do here. You have connection to your higher self. Just keep asking the questions. Like, keep asking until you get the answers. It'll come. About what you should do next.
Be open to hearing the answers as well. So,
definitely. And I think the other thing too, like, as you become more conscious, I certainly noticed this on my journey, where things used to happen to you, now they're happening to outside people, and it's almost like, so you don't have to go through it. If you know what I mean? Like, if you're using outside people as reflection points, and what they're going through and what it's triggering inside you, it means you don't actually have to physically go through that trauma yourself. So in some ways, they're creating a great act of service for you. You know, it's one of the most loving things that person can do, is actually go through their stuff, and for you to be able to consciously ask yourself, what is this bringing up in me? What's it triggering? What am I feeling about this? And seeing your stuff in that without having to physically go through it.
True. I think just allowing the other person to have their journey too, and knowing that it's not about you at the end of the day as well. Like, you just got to get on, like we just were saying before, about drawing your energy out of that too. Like, so the ego is not feeding into the other person's ego as well. So I can even think about that, say, situation where I had shared before in another video, where I decided to embark on this coaching program with that friend that I was just sharing about, and how at the time when I decided to do that, it's quite an expensive investment, you know, for this program, and my husband definitely was not happy about it at the time when I embarked on it, but I just was following my heart, and I knew I had to do it for whatever reason. It was just so clear that I had to go down that journey, and I just remember that first 4 or 5 days after making that decision, where he was probably very close to leaving. Like, it was kind of, he was at that point of just so annoyed with that I'd made this decision, and I had to be the mentor at the time that I was doing the program with. She sort of said, just let him have his experience. Like, she said, don't engage in it. Just get on with your own stuff. Get on with your own day. Get on with what you're excited about. Like, because I was just embarking on this brand new program, and I was really excited about it. So she's like,
you want to get into it.
And she said, just let. She has this really good saying where she's just like, let. Well, this applies to yourself too. It's just like, if you're having a really bad day, just actually let yourself have the best, worst give yourself permission to just have that, because we often judge, you know, that sometimes when we're going through something shitty is just like we try and make ourselves feel better, or we judge that we're having a shitty day. It's just like, no, just I'm having a shitty day. That's it. Like, and actually let yourself have the shitty day, knowing that it won't last. But it applies to other people too. It's just like, let them have a really shitty day and have the judgments that they're going to have, but don't buy into them too. Just get on with your own stuff and pull your energy out of it. And it was a really interesting process for me, because it was probably the first time ever that I had done that and not tried to fix the situation. And so that was like almost my first, learning, if you like, out of the program, was like that. And we hadn't even literally started, so it was kind of just pull your energy out of it and get on with your stuff. And I was so surprised at how I could do that so easily. It was just like, wow, like
it's almost scary.
Don't have to worry about what's happening over there, and it will turn out however it's going to turn out. And I actually can't really control it anyway at the end of the day. And it's going to show up the things that it needs to show up, because I consciously decided to go on this journey. So I knew that stuff was going to come up, and it did, like, immediately. So it's kind of, but disappointed. No, but it was just surprising to see how quickly you could take your energy out of something and it not draw you in, just because of a conscious decision to get on with your own stuff and just focus on yourself and stay in your own lane, and take your focus out of the other person outside of you all the time, and how they might be and what they might be thinking. And because it was always about me at the end of the day, like how I would feel in that situation and what I thought he was thinking about me, and had I made the wrong decision, like that sort of that, you start to doubt yourself then. And it was just noticing the pattern of how I would then go in to try and fix the situation, because I would feel guilty. And so it was just seeing all the patterns and that will play out differently for everybody, but that was just showing up a lot from my past, so it was kind of reflecting all back to the ways of being that I'd been for so many years. But it all has to come up for you to let it all go and see that it's not even you, it's not even who you truly are, it's just a learnt way of being that's not serving anymore. It's time to move on. It's an illusion. It's created that situation for that to happen, for me to see all those things and to start stepping back out of that little self, if you like, that very small separate person that didn't feel like it had guidance or wasn't connected, or had to kind of fix everything myself all the time. So
yeah, exactly. I think the other thing that came up then was we often shun sort of that sense of self. Like if somebody's got, really focused on themselves type thing, like almost like a negative thing. And I guess it can be, like, in some circumstances. But it can also work very much to your favor. And so maybe it's actually there for a reason, so that you don't get so caught up. Like, you can easily extract your energy from other people and just go, it's your stuff. Like, I don't need to get involved in that. For my own stuff, I'm just going to have my own story, and I'm going to get on with it. I've just signed up for this course and I'm excited about it, and so I'm just going to stay in that excitement for that, like whatever you're going through. But that sort of sense of almost self-preservation, I guess, and protection, like that's how it might come across. But that sense of self-love or self-respect enough to just be focused on yourself.
That's definitely where it was coming from.
And to not get involved in the story. And I think that's the defining thing, isn't it? It's like not getting involved in the story. So you can still be there for somebody, but as soon as you're in their story and you're buying into their story and their feelings and all that stuff, then you're lost again. You can't even help somebody at that point.
True.
So you're pretty much useless. You're just another person like them, and sort of not playing the victim sort of thing. Like, I guess that was something else that came up for me, is if somebody's come to you with, and they're crying on your shoulder and they've got all this stuff going on, particularly if it's happening with a number of people around you at the same time, that's quite intense. You're not a victim in that. So it's easy to fall into the trap of feeling like the weight of that. It's like, no, you've created that. You wanted that right now for whatever reason. Maybe you want to be a hero. Who knows? Maybe it actually is a bit of an ego ride as well, to actually be wanted and needed and have the shoulder to cry on, or something like that. So there can be those ego parts as well. And I guess it's interesting to ask yourself, like, okay, if I did create this, why did I create? What am I getting out of it? How's it benefiting me right now?
Yes.
Um,
Mm.
so,
The other thing I was thinking when you're talking about having it happen to multiple, coming at you from multiple people around you too, is that a lot of time people that are, on an awakening journey are usually quite sensitive people emotionally as well. So there is those terms that, people say, like, I'm an empath and things like that,
yeah,
which has a lot of sort of connotations to that word too, but effectively just means that you pick up stuff around you. Like, you sense things more than other people do. So
yeah,
people around you are going through stuff, you usually just sense it without they even saying anything to you. So oftentimes, if you are that way, people are naturally drawn to you because of your energy, because you have a very open energy and you're very unconditional usually in your way of being, and they know that you're very accepting, and so people are usually drawn to you and they will download their stuff on you because they feel really safe.
even strangers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've had that happen too. Yeah.
We just met and like, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I just met you.
Yeah. So yeah, people feel very safe around that energy because it is such an unconditional love. But the problem that we fall into then is that we take on other people's feelings and emotions and stories, and we feel like, well, we can fix them because we can see a different way. Like, we often also can see the potential in things as well. So, but we take it on as our own thing to try and fix. And and we've let those emotions kind of affect us as well, because we probably don't have effective boundaries with our energy as well most of the time. When you first start on that consciousness journey too, you're so used to just helping people all the time because you just know how to do it, sort of thing. It's just a natural superpower for you. But you do start to take on other people's stuff way too much, and then that's when you kind of burn yourself out and get resentful and think, why are these people downloading on me all the time? And so you do have to kind of learn how to manage your energy a lot more too, and know that it's not your stuff, and take your energy out of that too. And so I guess then it does become about empowering that other person rather than trying to help them all the time.
Yes.
Just because you can see something doesn't mean you have to be the one to fix it, sort of thing.
Yeah, so, it's true. Yeah, it's a really good point. Really good point. So, good points, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. That's I don't have anything else.
I think we've probably covered it. As we said, there's so many different angles that you can come at.
Yeah, there is. It's a really interesting topic, this one.
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, it is all the one infinite energy. So these people that we're seeing outside of us are not actually separate. It's just another expression of the infinite, and it's showing up as that for whatever reason. And I do like that point that you're making about, by seeing it outside of you, you don't actually have to physically go through that experience yourself too. So I think it is a lot about that too. So you notice, once you're really aware, and you put your focus more on you, and you see what triggers you in those situations, rather than putting your energy into the other person, because then you don't get those awarenesses. Like, you don't see it because the ego is focused too much outside of you. It attaches to that story, because then you won't actually see what that's about for you. So if you can sort of see what's happening outside of you and notice what really annoys you, what makes you feel uncomfortable, what really pains you, what makes you sad, like all those things, and just be really aware of those things in yourself, and start to see the patterns that it brings up, what it's bringing up for you to see. Start taking your power out of those. You'll probably find that those people just won't be asking you as much for help or advice, or their situation starts to resolve a bit, or you just don't feel the need to kind of jump in all the time to help
get
them.
involved.
So they might still have dramas going on. It doesn't mean that energetically you fix their problem. It doesn't mean that necessarily either, but you just don't feel the need to get drawn into it either. So
I think it's interesting, isn't it, as you become more conscious, like even with health and things like that, where you might have been the one that was sick, or you might have been the one with drama or whatever, and then as you become more conscious, it tends to sort of get concentric circles type thing, like it sort of moves away from you into, say, the people around you type thing, and you start to notice their health issues or their relationship problems or whatever. And then it moves out a little bit further, and it's sort of associates of yours that you knew on Facebook. they're having issues, and it's sort of slowly moving out of your space by that sort of thing. Like I've certainly noticed that before with health and different things. Like I certainly don't feel like I have a lot of people in my space now that are going through stuff much.
Yeah.
But maybe their people are going through stuff. Like it's slowly just moving away from your energy sphere.
Yeah, it's true. Actually. Yeah.
And I've definitely noticed that the more you get interested in or inspired by a project or something that you really love to do, and you're pouring all your energy into that,
yes,
there's definitely less room for drama and less room for stuff going on in your world or in the outside world as well. It all just seems to fall away. Because if we're creating in every single moment and all the energy is going towards something that you're consciously creating because you're really loving it, then there really isn't much energy left for other stuff at that point. So I think it's which brings up sort of what we talked about the other day about doing what you love and consciously creating as opposed to creating by default. Yeah, which is that I'm not really doing anything. I'm not, it's nothing really inspires me, and then suddenly you got all this drama going on in your life. You see this so many times from people. They're like, oh, I've got this going on and that going on and that going on. And it's like, if you just got into something that you really enjoyed, you'd probably find most of that wouldn't even be there. Yeah, that's the solution. Get into something that you're inspired by.
So a lot of time I think we derive our value from like being the one perhaps that can fix solution, fix things for people too, or the one that people could turn to and rely on, and be the the glue that holds everyone together, or the one that always gives advice. Like we make our self-worth attached to that as well. And the same that we can do with like money as well. Like there's so many things that we attach our worth to when it's got nothing to do with that at the end of the day. So once you start withdrawing that you stop putting your energy into being that person all the time. It can feel like a bit of a grieving process of death because you suddenly feel like, oh, well, where does my worth come from now? And you actually have to start digging a lot deeper to kind of know yourself as your worth is not attached to anything outside of you. Like it's a completely internal thing where it comes from. You don't have to actually have to do anything to have self-worth. You could just be and show up and be a bum your whole life if you wanted. It wouldn't matter. Like at the infinite perspective, it doesn't care. So it's like it's only ourselves from the ego that puts the value on that too. So so it does become about a self-love journey. I think when there's drama going on around you, like how much can you love yourself and show up as that energy in the world for yourself? And then it starts to ripple out, as you said. So
definitely. Very cool. I think we've done that topic now.
Yes. That's good.
That's a pretty good thrashing.
Yes.
Very cool. Well, we're back probably to our infinite lucky dip tomorrow to see what our next topic's going to be.
Yes. Been adding some new topics here. So.
Yes, I had a few sent through here. Just like little sparks popping into the head.
Yep.
No doubt you've been doing that.
Yes.
So yes, we'll see what the lucky dip provides tomorrow.
Yep.
Very cool.
Sounds good. Well, let us know in the comments how you found today's conversation. As you said, it was a continuation on from 2 days ago. So if there's anything else that's questions that might be arising, let us know, and we'll see if it's worthy of chatting about again, like jumping into it deeper again. But I think we've covered it from lots of different angles. So hopefully it's assisting. So
yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. Well, see you all tomorrow.
Bye.
Alrighty. Play in your own infinite lane. Stop worrying about everybody else.